The international terminal buzzed with the sound of rolling suitcases, echoing announcements, and the soft hum of impatient travelers. Under the sterile glow of fluorescent lights, Alicia Munro adjusted her navy blazer, balancing a coffee in one hand and her passport in the other. It had been a long morning, but this trip was important. In just a few hours, she would be on her way to Geneva, where she was scheduled to address a global aviation safety conference. Years of discipline and brilliance had brought her here. She never imagined a simple boarding gate would become the battleground that would shake an entire airline to its core. At gate C12, the line inched forward. Rick Dalton, the gate agent, leaned lazily against the counter, his posture dripping with arrogance. His co-worker, Linda, typed quietly beside him, trying to stay invisible. Rick had already spent the morning snapping at passengers, but when Alicia approached with her calm poise and confident smile, something about her presence set off his insecurities. "Good morning," Alicia said politely, offering her passport and boarding pass. "Checking in for flight 481 to Geneva." Rick glanced at her, his lips tightening into a thin line. "Uh-huh," he muttered. He stared at the passport photo, then at her, then back again. "This doesn't look like you." Alicia blinked, surprised. "Excuse me?" I said. Rick repeated louder. "This photo doesn't look like you. Maybe this isn't your passport." The people behind her began to murmur. Alicia felt the heat rise in her cheeks, not from guilt, but from disbelief. "That's absurd," she replied evenly. "It's a valid US passport. You can scan it." Rick smirked. "I'll decide that." He flipped through the pages, roughly, muttering under his breath. Linda glanced up nervously. "Rick," she whispered, "just check her in. You're holding the line." Rick ignored her. "We've had a lot of people trying to sneak through lately," he said loudly, then added with a smirk, "especially, well, certain types." Alicia's jaw tightened. She understood the meaning behind his words. Around them, people shifted uncomfortably, pretending not to listen, but unable to look away. She inhaled deeply, keeping her tone calm. "Sir, I'm asking you one last time. Please process my passport." Rick's grin widened. "You don't tell me what to do." And then, in one shocking motion, he ripped her passport in half. The sound cracked through the air like a gunshot. Gasps erupted from every direction. Alicia's breath caught in her throat as the torn pages fluttered to the floor. The photo page, her identity, her authority, was split down the middle. A mother shielded her child's eyes. A businessman cursed under his breath. Someone pulled out a phone to record. "What the hell is your problem?" a passenger shouted. "You can't do that." Rick held up the torn passport like a trophy. "Security risk," he declared. "You're not flying anywhere." Alicia's composure wavered for the first time. Her voice, though trembling, carried strength. "You just destroyed a federal document," she said. "That's a serious offense." Rick scoffed. "Yeah, right. Who's going to believe you?" By now, at least a dozen phones were filming. Linda stepped back, horrified. "Rick," she whispered, "you've gone too far." He sneered. "Stay out of it, Linda. You don't know who she is." Alicia slowly knelt, picking up the torn pieces. Her heart pounded, but her voice stayed steady. "You're right," she said quietly. "You don't know who I am." A security officer approached, alerted by the crowd. "What's going on?" "This passenger tried to use fake documents," Rick said quickly. "I handled it." The officer frowned. "You tore her passport. She was a risk," Rick barked. "I did what I had to." "Sir," Alicia interrupted firmly, holding up the pieces, "you violated multiple laws and international travel regulations in front of witnesses." Rick rolled his eyes. "Oh, please. What are you, a lawyer?" Alicia met his gaze, her voice turning sharp as steel. "No, I'm Alicia Munro, lead compliance officer for the Federal Aviation Authority. And you've just destroyed classified federal property in front of 200 passengers." Silence fell like a blanket. The crowd stopped whispering. Even the overhead announcements seemed to fade. Rick's smirk vanished, color drained from his face. Linda's trembling hand covered her mouth. Phones kept recording, capturing every word. I didn't know," Rick stammered. "I was just doing your job." Alicia interrupted. "No, you were abusing your position. And now you've jeopardized your airline's federal license." The security officer straightened, unsure what to do. Alicia's authority was undeniable. She turned to him calmly. "Please escort me to the airport director's office. I'll be filing a full incident report." As she walked away, the crowd parted silently. Someone whispered, "She works for the FAA." Another muttered, "That guy's finished." The humiliation on Rick's face was replaced by raw panic as he watched her leave. His power trip had collapsed, replaced by the dawning realization that he'd just crossed someone who could end his career, and much more. Within the hour, the footage would flood social media. By nightfall, millions would know the story of the gate agent who ripped up a black woman's passport, not realizing she had the power to ground his entire airline. And this was only the beginning. By the time Alicia reached the airport administration wing, the entire terminal was buzzing with whispers. The incident at Gate C-12 had spread faster than wildfire. Videos were already online, gathering millions of views within minutes. Hashtags like "Justice for Alicia" and hashtag "Ground That Airline" trended worldwide. But Alicia wasn't thinking about social media. Her focus was on procedure, cold, precise, and unstoppable. Inside the airport director's office, Director Warren Briggs, a stocky man in a grey suit, looked up as the door opened. "Ms. Monroe," he greeted cautiously. "Security informed me of an altercation. Please sit down." Alicia placed the torn remains of her passport on his desk. Her expression was calm but carried a quiet fire. "Altercation is a generous word," she said. "Your gate agent destroyed a federal document, falsely accused me of fraud, and publicly humiliated me before hundreds of passengers." Briggs swallowed hard. I saw the footage. It's going viral. Believe me, I'm horrified. Mr. Dalton's behavior was unacceptable." "It was more than unacceptable," Alicia corrected. "It was criminal." Under Title 18, Section 1543, destruction of a U.S. passport is a federal offense. Add racial discrimination under Title 7, and you have a disaster on your hands. Briggs wiped his forehead. "I understand, and I assure you, we'll take action." Alicia leaned forward, her voice low and measured. "You'll do more than take action. I'm authorizing an immediate FAA compliance audit of this airline's operations. Every flight, every employee, every procedure. Effective immediately." Briggs froze. You can do that?" "I can," Alicia said firmly, "and I will." As she spoke, her phone vibrated. She glanced at the caller ID. It was Daniel Reed, her colleague at the FAA headquarters. She excused herself and stepped into the hallway to take the call. "Daniel," she said, her voice clipped but steady. "We saw the footage," Daniel said without preamble. "The director's furious. The FAA wants a full report by morning." "You'll have it," she replied. "I'm grounding Flight 481 until we inspect the gate's security procedures." "Good," Daniel said. "And Alicia? Everyone's talking about this. CNN's already running the clip." Alicia sighed. "That was never the plan. I didn't want this to become public theater." "Too late," Daniel said softly. "The world's watching." When she hung up, she composed herself and returned to Briggs's office. Rick Dalton was there now, his arrogance replaced by a pale, trembling panic. He stood beside an airline lawyer who looked equally nervous. "Ms. Monroe," Briggs said quickly, "Mr. Dalton wishes to apologize." Rick opened his mouth, but Alicia raised a hand. "Save it," she said coolly. "Your apology means nothing when your actions endangered not only me, but your company's federal standing." Rick's jaw tightened. I didn't mean to." "You didn't mean to get caught," Alicia interrupted. "That's the difference." The lawyer cleared his throat. "Ms. Monroe, if I may, our airline is prepared to offer restitution, a formal apology, a replacement passport, compensation." Alicia's sharp gaze silenced him. "This isn't about money," she said. "This is about accountability. Your employee acted with racial bias in a federally regulated facility. Your procedures allowed it. And now, the FAA will review every one of your domestic operations." Rick looked like he might collapse. Briggs rubbed his temples. "Ms. Monroe, please, if you ground our flights, the financial fallout will be catastrophic." "Maybe catastrophe is what you need to remember that power doesn't come from a uniform," she said softly. "It comes from respect." Outside the office, the hum of reporters had begun to build. Word had reached the press that a senior FAA official had been assaulted at the terminal. Cameras flashed through the glass as security struggled to keep them at bay. Alicia gathered the torn passport from the desk. "I'll be in the operations room," she said. "You'll receive official orders from Washington within the hour." As she walked down the hallway, her heels clicked sharply against the tile, each step echoing authority. Linda, the quiet co-worker from the gate, waited outside, eyes filled with guilt. "Miss Monroe?" she asked timidly. I wanted to apologize. I tried to stop him." Alicia's expression softened. "I saw that," she said gently. "You did the right thing. When investigators call, tell them exactly what happened. Don't protect him." Linda nodded, tears brimming. "Yes, ma'am." Alicia gave her a reassuring smile. "The truth protects the brave." Back in the terminal, chaos had erupted. Passengers who'd witnessed the scene were being interviewed by local news crews. Some applauded Alicia as she passed, whispering words of support. Others simply stared, awed by her composure. The footage now had over 10 million views. People were calling for Rick's firing, for an airline boycott, for justice. By evening, the airline CEO, Margaret Leighton, called personally. "Ms. Monroe, please," she said urgently over the phone. "We're launching an internal investigation immediately. I want to meet with you tonight to resolve this." Alicia's tone remained cool. "You'll meet with the FAA's legal counsel first. I don't negotiate privately." "Of course," the CEO stammered. "We'll cooperate fully." As Alicia hung up, she stood near the massive windows overlooking the tarmac. Planes rolled under the sunset glow, their engines humming like restless beasts. She exhaled slowly. The humiliation of that moment at the gate still burned, but so did her resolve. She hadn't sought revenge, only respect, only justice. Yet now, the weight of her position gave her the means to demand both. Rick Dalton had torn her passport, believing it would strip her of identity and power. Instead, he'd exposed his own ignorance to the entire world. And Alicia Monroe was just getting started. The boardroom on the top floor of the airport hotel was built for comfort and intimidation. Glass walls overlooked the runway, polished oak gleamed under golden light, and the air smelled faintly of leather and panic. Margaret Leighton, CEO of North Air Airlines, sat at the head of the long table, fingers drumming nervously. Around her were senior executives, attorneys, and a visibly shaken Warren Briggs, the airport director. None of them spoke as the door opened and Alicia Monroe entered. She carried herself with quiet command, every step measured, her dark eyes unreadable. Dressed in a simple grey suit, she exuded the kind of authority that didn't need to be announced. The hum of conversation died immediately. Alicia set a slim black folder on the table and took her seat without waiting for invitation. "Ms. Monroe," Margaret began carefully, "thank you for meeting us on such short notice. I want to start by offering our deepest apologies for the behavior of our employee." Alicia nodded, expression controlled. "Accepted," she said, "but apologies don't repair broken systems." The room fell silent again. Margaret exchanged a nervous glance with her legal counsel. "We understand the severity of this," she continued, "and we're willing to cooperate with any FAA procedures deemed necessary." "I'm sure you are," Alicia replied evenly, opening her folder. "As of this morning, your airline is under full compliance review. Flight operations at 3 major hubs will be temporarily suspended pending investigation." Margaret's pen slipped from her fingers. "Suspended? Ms. Monroe, please. Thousands of passengers depend on us. The financial damage could be catastrophic." "So was your employee's behavior," Alicia said sharply. "You employ people who represent your company to the public. When one of them destroys a passport and racially profiles a US citizen, the damage extends far beyond money. It reaches the credibility of aviation safety oversight itself." A junior lawyer spoke up timidly. "Ms. Monroe, might we consider a private settlement?" "Perhaps." "No," Alicia interrupted. "This isn't about a settlement. It's about reform." The CEO leaned forward, voice trembling slightly. "Then tell us what you want." Alicia closed her folder and clasped her hands. "First, an official written apology issued publicly, signed by the board, not your PR department. Second, the immediate termination of Rick Dalton and disciplinary review for his supervisor. Third, comprehensive anti-discrimination training across all North Air staff audited by the FAA. Briggs blanched. "That could cost millions." Alicia's gaze cut through him. "So did your silence." Margaret swallowed. "And if we comply?" Alicia leaned back, her tone cooling. "Then your airline remains operational while we conduct oversight. Refuse, and I'll initiate federal suspension of your license. No one dared breathe. Outside, jets rumbled across the tarmac, a steady reminder of the power Alicia held in her words. Finally, Margaret spoke. We'll comply. Every demand. Good, Alicia said softly. Because this isn't just your scandal. It's a mirror held to an industry that's forgotten accountability. For a moment, even Margaret seemed humbled. You know, she said quietly, you could have handled this differently. You could have called me privately, spared the publicity. Alicia met her gaze. I could have, she said. But how many passengers without my credentials have been humiliated, denied, or silenced? How many walked away because they thought no one would believe them? I'm not just standing up for me, I'm standing up for them. Her words landed like thunder. The room shifted, executives looked down at the table ashamed. Even Briggs nodded faintly, realizing the depth of her conviction. Alicia stood, gathering her documents. I'll expect your public statement within 24 hours, she said, and I'll personally review your compliance reforms next quarter. Margaret rose as well, extending her hand. Ms. Munro, she said softly, I truly am sorry. Alicia shook it briefly. Then prove it. She turned to leave, but before she reached the door, the CEO called after her. For what it's worth, Margaret said, Dalton's already been terminated. Effective immediately. Alicia paused, then nodded once. That's a start. As she walked through the lobby, reporters surged forward. Cameras flashed. Microphones jutted out. Miss Munro, are you grounding the airline? Was the gate agent arrested? Do you plan legal action? Alicia stopped for a moment, her calm radiating through the chaos. No comment, she said. Justice isn't served through sound bites, it's served through systems. The crowd pressed for more, but she moved steadily toward the exit, escorted by 2 FAA officers. Outside, the evening air was cool, the sky streaked orange and violet. Across the runway, planes continued to take off and land, each one a symbol of precision, discipline, and responsibility, the very values she had dedicated her life to protecting. Her phone buzzed again. A message from Daniel. The White House wants a briefing. Tomorrow morning. You've started something big. Alicia smiled faintly. Then let's finish it. That night, as the world debated the viral footage, North Air's official statement went live. It admitted fault, promised reforms, and praised Alicia Munro's professionalism. But even as public outrage began to cool, something deeper stirred within the aviation community, a reckoning for equality, oversight, and accountability. Rick Dalton's name would vanish from corporate records, but Alicia's would echo across headlines, conference halls, and policy papers. The woman whose passport had been torn in half was now reshaping an entire industry. And tomorrow, the true consequences would begin. The following morning, the marble floors of the Federal Aviation Authority headquarters gleamed beneath the morning sun. Inside the main conference room, the air was thick with tension and anticipation. Seated around the long oval table were some of the most powerful figures in the aviation world: federal regulators, airline executives, and media representatives, waiting outside the glass walls for the verdict. At the center sat Alicia Munro, her expression calm, her focus absolute. A large screen displayed the paused frame of the viral video, the moment Rick Dalton tore her passport in two. The image had become a symbol across the country. For millions, it represented not just humiliation, but the silent struggles faced by countless passengers who never had the power to fight back. Alicia straightened her notes. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, her voice steady, we are here not to discuss one man's misconduct, but the systemic failures that allowed it to happen. Across the table, Margaret Layton, CEO of North Air, looked pale. She hadn't slept. Her airline's stock had plummeted overnight, losing nearly $2 billion in market value. Sponsors were pulling contracts, and travel agencies were threatening to cut ties. Alicia continued. As of 0600 hours, the FAA's preliminary audit revealed multiple policy violations within North Air's training and supervision procedures. These are not isolated errors. They are patterns. She looked up, her tone razor-sharp. And patterns reveal culture. Margaret swallowed hard. Ms. Munro, we've already begun compliance training across all divisions. Alicia raised a hand. Too late for promises. Accountability must precede action. Whispers rippled through the room. several reporters outside pressed against the glass. Alicia tapped her pen on the table once, commanding silence. "Effective immediately," she said. "North Air's international operations are suspended for 72 hours, pending completion of the federal review." Gasps filled the air. Margaret's jaw dropped. "Suspended," she whispered. "You can't." "I can," Alicia replied, her tone firm but unflinching. "And under Section 451 of the Aviation Oversight Act, I'm legally required to, when public trust and procedural integrity are compromised." One of the airline's lawyers tried to interject, but Alicia continued before he could. "This isn't punishment," she said. "It's protection. Protection for every passenger who steps onto your planes expecting professionalism, not prejudice." Margaret lowered her gaze, defeated. "Understood." Alicia softened slightly. "You built an empire, Miss Layton, but somewhere along the way you forgot that the people you serve are human beings. Power without empathy corrodes everything." The CEO nodded weakly. "We'll comply fully." "Good," Alicia said. "The world will be watching." For a long moment no one spoke. The hum of distant jet engines echoed faintly through the glass. Then, slowly, Alicia gathered her documents and rose from her seat. "Before I leave," she said, turning to the room, "I want to make one thing clear. What happened at Gate C12 wasn't about me. It was about every traveler who's been told they don't belong. It ends now." The silence was reverent. Even the reporters outside stood still, their cameras lowered. Alicia gave a small nod and walked toward the exit. Outside the building, dozens of journalists surrounded her. Microphones thrust forward, questions flying in rapid succession. "Miss Monroe, do you feel vindicated? Will you press charges against the gate agent? What message do you have for the world?" Alicia paused on the steps, sunlight framing her figure. "This was never about vengeance," she said clearly. "It was about justice and respect. Every traveler, regardless of color, gender, or background, deserves both." The crowd applauded. Cameras flashed. Somewhere, a young woman in a North Air uniform watched the broadcast on her phone, tears in her eyes. For the first time, she felt seen. Hours later, Alicia sat in her office overlooking the Washington skyline. Daniel Reed entered, holding a tablet. "It's official," he said with a grin. "North Air accepted full responsibility. They're instituting nationwide reforms. The story's already being called the gate that changed the skies." Alicia allowed herself a faint smile. "Good. Maybe next time a uniformed employee will think twice before deciding who belongs." Daniel nodded, admiration clear in his eyes. "You know, you didn't just ground an airline. You grounded arrogance." Alicia chuckled softly. "I didn't ground anything. I just reminded them of the rules." The office grew quiet again, filled only by the hum of the city below. She turned toward the window, watching a distant plane ascend into the clouds. It glimmered in the morning light, powerful and free, a symbol of everything flight should represent. Her phone buzzed, a message from her mother. "Mom, saw you on TV. You made us proud." Alicia smiled, her eyes misting. She finally felt peace. Across the country, headlines read, "FAA official grounds airline after racist incident. Industry-wide reform begins." At the same time, Rick Dalton sat alone in his small apartment, scrolling through the news. His career was over. No airline would ever hire him again. On the screen, Alicia's speech replayed. He turned off the television, but her words lingered in his mind. "Power without empathy corrodes everything." For the first time, he understood their weight. By evening, airports across America were buzzing, not with scandal, but with hope. Airlines began re-evaluating policies, diversity programs, and staff behavior. Travelers of color shared their own stories online, inspired by Alicia's courage. At the FAA building, Alicia stood on the rooftop terrace, wind tugging gently at her hair. The city lights sparkled beneath her. She whispered to herself, "Justice takes time, but when it comes, it soars." Above her, another jet roared into the night sky, cutting through the darkness with confidence and grace. The skies were safer now, not because of new rules, but because one woman had refused to bow to prejudice. And though her passport had been torn apart, her legacy would never be.